Hello and welcome to another one of my tutorials for Virtual Con. My name is Dan Gonzalez, also known as Techno Chief or Gonzalez Cosplay UK. I'm going to be going over the basics for making cosplay armor today. Again, welcome to Virtual Con, and I hope you enjoy your time. So going into a quick overview of what I'm going to be covering today, it's going to be on the materials that you can use for cosplay armor, the basic methodology for creating cosplay armor, sealing, like sealing cosplay armor for painting, templating for how to design and plan your armor, then also painting cosplay armor. So moving on to materials, the most common or one of the two most common methods of making cosplay armor is using EVA Foam. This is the kind of stuff that's used for baby mats or the stuff that you find in garages for like safety mats. The other one that gets used is cardstock or cardboard, usually cardstock. I'm going to go over the advantages and disadvantages of both so you have a clear idea of what may be best suited for you. So EVA Foam. This is usually the most budget friendly because you don't need to use additional methods like fiberglass resin, which is typically used for cardstock. EVA foam usually amounts to about £2.50p or about £3 per mat. It depends the best deal that you can get. They range from different prices. You're usually, for a full suit of cosplay armor from boots, legs, waist, chest, arms and helmet, you will find you'll need about 6 to 8 mats for EVA foam. It's going to be up to you to plan how many mats you need. What are the advantages of using it? As well as being budget friendly, it is very flexible and it's easy to fix if you mess up at any given point. So if you are starting out making cosplay armor, I would say EVA foam is probably one of the best methods for you to start on. It's also easy to plan on, and it's if you're kind of winging it, I would say this is the best one for you if you're not taking it too seriously and you just want to kind of dabble making a bit of armor. The disadvantages of it is that you in order to do things like sealing, like the EVA foam and stuff, you can end up doing it wrong so that it doesn't quite give off that armor feeling at the end because it's quite porous. So you need to seal it in order to make it paintable, things like that. And as well, it is flexible, but it can break easily under pressure. Things like if you want to, things like kind of stabbing motions, things like that, it tends to be easier to damage. However, when you're using things like cardstock and you're using things like resin on cardstock, it is much more durable. You get less flexibility in cardstock if you're using things like this. If you're using paper mache, you'll get a bit more leniency with how much flexibility you get, but it's also gives off a better finish when you're painting it for cardstock, and it also doesn't require you to seal the armor. However, the disadvantage is that, especially when you're using resin on cardstock, which is basically it's a hardening process and it thickens the cardstock, and then you kind of sand it down. That's what the process of using resin cardstock is. The unfortunate thing is that, number one, you require an amount of space and a safe place to do this because process, if I remember correctly, it can give off toxic, it can be quite dangerous, it can give off fumes and things, so it can also be expensive as well. So budget wise, paper mache as opposed to resin on cardstock is probably the cheapest, even cheaper than foam. Moving on to equipment, I'm going to be focusing more on EVA foam, as that's the one I tend to use. The things that you'll need as a basis will be a hot glue gun, hot glue sticks. I would estimate you will need I think they're about 12 centimeters long. You'll need about maybe, let's say 40 glue sticks for a kind of standard armor set. If you have a bit more budget on you, you can use things like contact cement or epoxy resin. These tend to set a lot slower. Epoxy resin tends to have a 24-hour time base to set and cure, as opposed to hot glue, which dries in a few minutes. So if you've got time, you can use these stronger ones because they are much stronger as an adhesive, but if you are limited on your time, use hot glue. You're also going to need mats, 6 to 8 mats as I mentioned. It's going to be up to you to figure out how many you need. You're also going to need a card and pen to create your templates. You're also going to need a scissor or craft knife to cut the shapes out when you draw them onto foam. I would suggest using a craft knife. So this is what most people tend to be comfortable with. You need to make sure that a craft knife has plenty of sharp blades to replace. It needs to stay sharp or you're going to have jagged edges when you cut out the foam. I prefer to use scissors. That's just my personal preference. If you do use scissors, you need to use fabric scissors or something with a long blade. Short blades don't tend to cut as well, and it's just more comfortable to use. Moving on to your templating. Again, this is a very basic tutorial, so I won't go over this, but you will need to find files. If you're not making your own templates, look up Peppercura files. These are usually for EVA foam or card. They're based slightly differently. These can be printed off onto A4. These take a much longer time typically if it's a more complicated design. For basic armor, you won't need to print off as much. These will be preset by other people, and if you can't do templates on your own, they're an easy alternative. If you can make templates on your own, especially if templates are not already available, gonna get some card. Paper works too, but you don't want it flopping all about the place. I tend to find card more easy to use, much easier to use. And you can also test fit it once you've cut it out, make mistakes on it, whatever, if you're making your own templates on card. Then moving on to sealing the foam, you're going to want to use Plastidip or resin-based PVA. Resin-based PVA tends to be more budget effective. Plastidip also works too. That's to fill in the little porous sections in the EVA foam. You want to use a paintbrush for this, and it's easy to put on. I would say about 3 to 4 layers of Plastidip, maybe 2, but you want to be a bit more. Of using resin-based PVA, use about 5 layers. These can all mostly be found on Amazon. Now, moving on to the painting, you want to use a primer. This is to get the surface area of your armor paintable, and then you want to put on your main paint, which would usually be best to use spray paint for this. It's much faster to use as opposed to hand painting on. You also avoid using a paintbrush, which can leave strokes. And then if you're putting some detail on, I would suggest using paint that you have to brush on, and then you can also use paintbrush techniques to get certain kind of effects on it. And that goes over the basics for covering cosplay armor. It's a very basic overview so that you can have an idea of what to look up and what kind of things you want to use. Again, if you need any specific advice, then just put your comments down or message me on my Facebook page or my personal Facebook profile, which is easier to contact me on, and I'll try my best to answer questions individually. I hope this has helped, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your time here at VirtualCon. Thank you very much.